What's up, Prime Field Nation? Welcome back to the channel where we break down everything that's hot in basketball. Today, we're diving into something that has the entire WNBA shaking in their boots. The transformed Indiana Fever squad that's building around superstar Caitlin Clark. Before we get into this video, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe if you're new here. The Indiana Fever just made a move that has the entire league talking. On February 4th, they announced the signing of Sydney Colson, a two-time WNBA champion. This isn't just any free agency pickup. This is a statement from the Fever's front office that they are serious about building a championship contender. Colson brings championship DNA to a young Fever team. She's been there, she's done that, and she knows what it takes to reach the mountaintop in the WNBA. But this isn't the only move the Fever have made this offseason. They've been on an absolute mission to transform their roster into one that can realistically compete for a WNBA championship as soon as 2025. Many of you remember that just a year ago, the Fever were a lottery team. But after drafting Clark, we saw glimpses of what this team could become. They started slow but found their rhythm as the season progressed, eventually making the playoffs. Now, with these off-season additions, they're setting themselves up to be a problem for the rest of the league. In a recent interview with Boardroom's Shlomo Sprung, Colson dropped some major insights about her new team that had Fever fans absolutely hyped. When asked about similarities between the Young Aces team she joined in 2019, which featured number 1 picks like Kelsey Plum, Aja Wilson, and Jackie Young, and her new Fever squad with top picks Aliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, Colson gave us some serious food for thought. Here's what she said, and listen closely because this is gold. It takes time to build when you're getting players when they're young. A lot of people want to rush championships, but it's not something that happens overnight. It's a long process of figuring things out together. Sometimes you have to lose a lot. You learn through the losses and the wins. This is the blueprint we've seen time and time again in sports. The Warriors before they became the Warriors. The Storm before they dominated. Even the Aces themselves went through growing pains before becoming the powerhouse they are today. What the Fever are doing is not just collecting talent. They're building a culture. They're creating an environment where their young stars can flourish while learning from experienced winners. And that's exactly what championship teams are made of. Now let's talk about Colson's championship experience and what it brings to this young Fever squad. When she joined the Aces back in 2019, she was part of a team that was still finding its identity. Sound familiar? That's exactly where the Fever are right now. Colson told Sprung, "You make it to the semifinals, you lose. Sometimes you have to get lucky and that doesn't take place. But it'll help to have vets that come from winning cultures who understand what it takes to not get too high or too low in this league." That's the X factor right there. The Fever now have experienced players who can teach the young core how to handle the emotional roller coaster of a WNBA season. They know how to stay level when things get tough. And that mental toughness is what separates good teams from great ones. Colson continued, "We have a nice mixture and we have a nice core group of young players that are hungry to win and are going to put in the work. This is why I'm so high on the Fever for 2025. They got the perfect recipe. Young, hungry stars with unlimited potential, plus veterans who have been there and done that. It's the same formula we've seen work time and again in basketball. Look at the Aces. They started with young talent like Wilson, Plum, and Young. Then they added experienced pieces, and boom, championship dynasty. The Fever are following that exact same blueprint. But what makes this Fever team particularly dangerous is the presence of Caitlin Clark. We're talking about a generational talent who's already shown she can adapt and excel at the professional level. Remember how the Fever started last season? They struggled out of the gate as Clark was adjusting to the WNBA. But by the end of the season, they were a playoff team that nobody wanted to face. Now imagine that same Clark, but with a full year of professional experience under her belt, surrounded by more talent and more championship experience. That's why opposing teams should be terrified of what's coming. When Sprung asked Colson about how the Fever figured things out last year and made the playoffs, and how Caitlin will now know what she's doing for a full season with vets like Colson to keep the team on point, her response was chilling for the rest of the league. She said, "It'll be a much easier transition, and now they have a year under their belts together, which will be scary." Scary? That's coming from a two-time champion who knows what it takes to win in this league. When someone like Colson uses the word scary to describe her own team's potential, the rest of the WNBA needs to take notice. Let's break down exactly why this is so frightening for opponents. First, Clark is no longer a rookie. She's learned the speed of the pro game. She's figured out how to create space against WNBA defenders. She's identified when to take over and when to facilitate. Second, Aliyah Boston will be entering her third season. We're talking about a former Rookie of the Year who's just scratching the surface of her potential. The Clark-Boston pick and roll could become one of the most unstoppable plays in the entire league. Third, the chemistry that was building toward the end of last season will be there from day one this year. No more feeling out process, no more learning each other's tendencies. This team will hit the ground running. And finally, the addition of championship-caliber veterans like Colson provides the leadership and steady presence that young teams often lack in crucial moments. Colson also mentioned she's excited to be up close and personal with Caitlin to see what it's like day to day. That speaks volumes about Clark's growing reputation in the league. Even established champions want to witness the Caitlin Clark experience firsthand. So what does all this mean for the Fever's 2025 season? It means they're not just a playoff team anymore, they're a legitimate contender. The days of the Fever being an easy win on the schedule are over. This is a team that's built to make noise now and potentially dominate for years to come. The rest of the WNBA has been put on notice. The Indiana Fever are coming, and as Sydney Colson says, they're going to be scary. So what's next for this rapidly improving Fever squad? Well, the foundation is set. The pieces are in place. Now it's about putting it all together when the season begins. One thing Colson emphasized in her interview was the importance of patience. She said, "A lot of people want to rush championships, but it's not something that happens overnight." This is a critical point for Fever fans to remember. Yes, the potential is enormous. Yes, they could make a deep playoff run this season. But building a dynasty takes time. It's a process of growth, learning, and development that happens both individually and collectively. The good news is that the Fever are following the perfect blueprint. They've drafted wisely, acquiring generational talents in Clark and Boston. They've supplemented that young core with experienced veterans who know what winning looks like. And they've created a culture where everyone understands their role. What I'm most excited to see is how Clark evolves in her second season. We've seen so many stars take a massive leap in year two. LeBron did it. Agile Wilson did it. If Clark follows that same trajectory, we could be looking at an MVP caliber season from her. And let's not forget about the coaching factor. The stability and system that's been established will allow these players to flourish. The X's and O's will be familiar, letting the team focus on execution rather than learning new concepts. The schedule will also be more favorable for the Fever this time around. As a playoff team, they'll command more respect from the league, which means better game times and potentially more national TV appearances. The Caitlin Clark effect is real, folks, and it's only going to grow stronger. So circle the Indiana Fever on your calendars, Prime Field Nation. This is a team that's not just looking to make noise, they're looking to shake the entire foundation of the WNBA. With their mix of young talent and veteran leadership, they position themselves to be a force for years to come. As Sydney Colson said, this new-look Fever roster will be scary for opposing WNBA teams to deal with in 2025. And based on everything we've seen and heard, I couldn't agree more. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Drop your predictions for the Fever's 2025 season in the comments below. This is Prime Field, and I'll see you on the next one.